I'm on the road a lot. You know, if I just took politics out of it. Yeah. Completely. I know ticket sales are up 20–30%.
Jay Leno has faced different heartbreaking tragedies and accidents that should have ended him. He survived flames that melted his skin, walked away from crashes that shattered his bones, and so on. But there is one heartbreaking tragedy that is completely consuming Jay Leno from inside out, and the worst part, Jay Leno may not make it out alive. The man who wouldn't break. On November 12, 2022, Jay Leno was in his garage doing what he loved most, working on cars. For Jay, this wasn't some hobby. If you called it an obsession, you might not be wrong, because Jay's passion for collecting vintage spanned several years. However, on this day, maybe Jay shouldn't have been to his garage. On this particular day, Jay was underneath a 1907 White Motor Company steam car with his friend Dave Kalaki. It was a beautiful and classic vehicle. They were trying to clear the car's clogged fuel line. Jay called up to Dave to blow some air through the line. Standard procedure when you're trying to clear a blockage. Dave did exactly what he was asked to do, and then everything went wrong in an instant. The gasoline sprayed directly into Jay's face, and next to Jay was an open flame. Jay's face erupted in flames, and what makes it worse is that Dave didn't know. Even when Jay told him, Dave misunderstood Jay, and in that misunderstanding, the fire had begun to melt Jay's face. When Dave realized what was going on, he sprung into action. He jumped on top of him to smother the fire and managed to put it out and save Jay's life. However, 7% of Jay's body had suffered third-degree burns. You know, the kind that destroys not just the surface skin, but everything underneath. The kind that requires skin grafts from human cadaver tissue just to begin the healing process. You might think 7% of Jay's body doesn't look like much, but the burn areas included his face, hands, and chest. And because of the severity, Jay spent 10 days at the Grossman Burn Center in Los Angeles. He underwent surgery and received hyperbaric oxygen treatments. The medical staff worked around the clock to save his face and his hands. But you know what's interesting? The entire time, Jay maintained his sense of humor. Classic Jay Leno, are we right? When he was finally discharged on November 21st, he posed for photos with the burn center staff, his injuries still visible, his face still swollen and scarred. Less than 2 weeks later, he was back on stage doing stand-up comedy. "Never thought of myself as a roast comic," he joked at the Comedy and Magic Club in California. "We got 2 shows tonight, regular and extra crispy." But Jay wasn't done being tested, and he would see that apart from getting crispy, he could also become crunchy. On January 17, 2023, just 2 months after the garage fire, Jay decided to take one of his vintage motorcycles out for a test ride. It was a 1940 Indian motorcycle, one of many in his collection of 160 bikes. He was cruising along when he smelled gasoline leaking. So he did what any reasonable person would do. He pulled off the road into what looked like an empty parking lot. What he didn't see was the wire. Someone had strung a wire across the parking lot between 2 poles. No flag hanging from it, no warning signs, just a wire at exactly neck height for someone riding a motorcycle. Jay hit it at full speed. The wire clotheslined him, struck him directly in the neck, and threw him off his bike like he'd been yanked by an invisible hand. He landed hard on the pavement in a massive crash. When he finally picked himself up and assessed the damage, the list was brutal. He had broken his collarbone, ribs, and cracked his kneecaps. His entire body was screaming in pain. And the motorcycle? It kept going without him, rolling away like nothing had happened. "But I'm okay," Jay told reporters afterward, but he had to cancel his stand-up shows temporarily as he underwent shoulder surgery. He spent weeks recovering from injuries that would have hospitalized most people for months, and still, Jay bounced back because that's what he does. He gets hurt, he jokes about it, he moves on. Then came November 2024. Jay was staying at a Hampton Inn in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, about 30 miles outside Pittsburgh. He had a comedy show scheduled at the Palace Theater that evening. Before the show, he wanted to grab dinner at a nearby restaurant. The restaurant was right there at the bottom of a hill, maybe 200 yards away. He could walk around the road, which would take about 1.5 miles, or he could take a shortcut straight down the hill. The hill didn't look that steep. Jay made his choice and started walking down. Then, 2 steps in, that walk turned into tumbles and rolls down the hill as he lost his footing. Jay crashed and bounced off rocks as he fell approximately 60 feet down the hillside. He remembers thinking, as he was falling, that he needed to call an ambulance. This was serious. His body was slamming into rocks, his face hitting the ground, his wrists taking the impact. And as he rolled past a group of women walking nearby, he heard one of them say to the other, "That looks like Jay Leno rolling down a hill." When he finally stopped at the bottom, the damage was extensive. Broken wrist, lost fingernail, severe bruising covering the left side of his body, and swollen eyes. In fact, his eyes were so swollen he needed an eye patch. And what did Jay Leno do? He ate dinner. Then he went to the theater and performed his comedy show just 3 hours after falling 60 feet down a hillside. The show must go on, right? But wait, there's more to Jay's health struggles. He's been living with dyslexia his entire life, which made school challenging and pushed him toward comedy as a way to communicate and connect with people. He also manages high cholesterol, though compared to being set on fire and falling off motorcycles, that barely registers on his list of concerns. So let's tally this up. In the span of just over 2 years, Jay Leno has been burned alive, thrown from a motorcycle, and rolled down a rocky hillside. He's undergone skin grafts, multiple surgeries, and more physical rehabilitation than most people experience in a lifetime. His body has been broken and rebuilt so many times that he jokes he's running out of original parts. Yet, with all that pain, all those near-death experiences, all the scars and broken bones and lingering injuries, Jay will tell you the same thing every single time someone asks him about his hardest challenge. None of it compares to watching Mavis forget. Because physical pain heals, broken bones mend, burnt skin grows back. But watching the person you love most in the world slowly disappear while they're still standing right in front of you, that's a kind of agony no amount of skin grafts can fix. And that pain could be what would end Jay's life. The woman who changed everything. Jay Leno isn't just a wife. He is losing a partnership that defined his entire adult life. It all began in 1976. Jay's performing at the Comedy Store in Los Angeles. He's nobody yet, just another comedian grinding away, hoping for a break. In the audience sits Mavis Nicholson, watching his set. She's not there for him specifically. Comedy clubs were just a thing you did in LA back then, but something about Jay catches her attention. His timing, maybe. His observational humor? Who knows? They start talking after the show, and here's where it gets interesting. Mavis tells him straight up she doesn't believe in marriage. Not in a bitter way. She just never saw herself as a wife. Too independent. Too focused on causes bigger than herself. She'd watched her mother's generation get trapped in traditional roles and decided that life wasn't for her. Jay didn't care, and fell hard anyway. They dated for 4 years, and in those years, Jay slowly, patiently showed Mavis that marriage to him would be different, that she wouldn't lose herself, that he'd support every wild ambition she had. And somehow, impossibly, she believes him. On November 30th, 1980, they got married. Mavis kept her last name, Nicholson, professionally, and made it clear from day one their marriage wasn't going to be a traditional Hollywood wife situation. No red carpets unless she wants to. No standing in Jay's shadow. Her own life, her own path. Jay didn't mind this. He wanted it. So as he built his career, working his way up from $7.5 stand-up gigs to guest spots on The Tonight Show to eventually taking over Johnny Carson's desk in 1992, Mavis built something completely different. She became a feminist activist. Not the casual kind, the real deal. She fights for women's rights globally, particularly in Afghanistan. In the 1990s and early 2000s, as the Taliban crushed women under brutal oppression, Mavis co-founded the Feminist Majority Foundation's campaign to stop gender apartheid. She travels to refugee camps. She testifies before Congress. In 2002, she was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. They never had kids, and this was intentional. Mavis told Good Housekeeping back in 2014 that she knew by age 7 she didn't want children. Something about seeing her mother's life, the sacrifices, the loss of identity, made her certain. Jay supported the decision completely. No pressure, just acceptance. For 45 years, this worked perfectly. Jay had his cars, his comedy, his Tonight Show empire. Mavis had her causes, her travels, her independence. They'd meet back at their Burbank home and just be together. Friends described them as genuinely happy, and for 4.5 decades it was beautiful. But here's the cruel thing about time. Time doesn't care about your love story. Time doesn't care how perfect your marriage is. Time doesn't care that you're good people who deserve a happy ending. Time just takes and takes and takes. When memories become strangers. Eventually, time took too much from Jay. The changes started slowly. So slowly Jay probably didn't notice at first. Mavis would forget small things, keys misplaced and appointments missed. Normal stuff that happens to everyone as they get older, right? You laugh it off, joke about senior moments, move on, except it didn't stop. By 2023, the problems were impossible to ignore. Mavis would get confused about where she was. She'd struggle with decisions that used to be automatic. Her fierce independence, the core of who she'd always been, started crumbling. The woman who traveled to war zones, who stared down Taliban oppression, who commanded rooms full of politicians, couldn't remember if she'd eaten breakfast. The diagnosis came in early 2024. Mavis had advanced dementia, not an early stage where you've got time to adjust. Advanced, meaning the disease had been eating away at her brain for years already, destroying neural pathways, erasing memories, disconnecting her from reality piece by piece. Mavis Leno was 78 years old, and she disappeared while alive. By April 2024, things had deteriorated so much that Jay had to petition for conservatorship. Conservatorship, the legal term that means someone can no longer make decisions about their own life. The same Mavis who'd managed complex international campaigns, who'd handled foundation finances, who'd been nominated for a Nobel Prize, could no longer be trusted to understand their bank accounts. The court granted it. Jay became legally responsible for her care, her finances, every aspect of her existence. The role reversal was complete. The independent woman who'd never wanted to rely on anyone now relied on him for everything. But here's where it gets even more heartbreaking. For almost 3 years, Mavis woke up every single morning and relived her mother's death. Her mother had died years ago. Mavis grieved, processed it, moved on like humans do. But dementia doesn't care about grief you've already finished. Dementia traps you in moments, forces you to experience trauma fresh and raw over and over again. Jay described this situation as tricky, knowing that tomorrow she'll wake up and do it again. Jay's routine now is something out of a different life entirely. He cooks for Mavis every night, feeds her, and she can't always manage utensils on her own anymore. The woman who used to fly around the world now needs help eating dinner. She rarely recognizes where she is. Their home of decades, filled with memories and photographs and evidence of their life together, looks foreign to her most days. Sometimes she knows Jay. Sometimes she just sees a kind stranger helping her. But Jay insists she's still in there. She's comfortable, she's contented, he told reporters. He talks about how she still has her fire, how she'll growl at sexist lines in old TV shows they watch together. Little glimpses of the feminist warrior she used to be, breaking through the fog for just a moment before disappearing again. He's created workarounds to give her some joy. Mavis used to love traveling, seeing new places, and experiencing different cultures. She can't do that anymore. Can't handle airports or hotels or the confusion of unfamiliar surroundings. So Jay takes her on drives through their neighborhood in various cars from his collection. He points out landmarks, narrates what they're seeing, simulates the exploration she craves. It's not real travel, but it's something. I enjoy taking care of her, Jay told Graham Bensinger in April 2025. She's a very independent woman, so I like that I'm needed. He said it with a smile, but his eyes told a different story. His eyes looked tired, lost, like a man trying to convince himself that this is okay, that he can handle this, that love is enough. In September 2025, he expanded on this, said caregiving gives him purpose, and maybe that's true, maybe it does. But you can hear the weight in every interview, the exhaustion, the grief of watching someone vanish in slow motion. Here's what nobody tells you about dementia. Everyone focuses on the person who's sick, and they should, obviously. But there's another victim too, the caregiver who watches it happen, who remembers everything the sick person forgets, who carries the weight of both their memories and their own. Jay remembers 45 years, first dates and wedding vows and late-night conversations and inside jokes that don't work anymore because Mavis doesn't remember the setup. He remembers her fierce and independent and brilliant. He remembers her traveling the world, changing lives, fighting battles most people didn't even know existed. Now he watches her struggle with reality and watch the sharp mind that used to challenge him slowly dissolve into confusion. That's its own kind of death. slower, and crueler. Because the person is still there physically, still breathing and still present, but the essence of who they were, that's gone, and it's never coming back. And here's the thing that makes Jay's situation even harder, even more isolating. They don't have kids, no children to share the burden with, no son or daughter to help with doctor's appointments or give Jay a break for a weekend or just understand what he's going through because they're going through it too. When Mavis eventually passes, and she will, there's no next generation to carry forward memories of who she was. No grandchildren asking about the grandmother who fought for women's rights. Just Jay, alone with his memories and his cars and the massive empty house they built together. In November 2025 interviews, Jay got emotional talking about this. The childlessness they chose, that made perfect sense for decades, now feels different, heavier. "I would rather be with her than doing something else," he said. True, probably, but also sad, profoundly sad. How long can someone live like this? How many mornings can you watch your wife grieve for a mother she's grieved for already? How many times can you introduce yourself to someone who used to know every detail of your soul? How many drives around the neighborhood can substitute for a lifetime of real adventures? Jay's 75. Mavis is 79. This could continue for years, or it could end tomorrow. Dementia doesn't follow a schedule. It doesn't care about your plans, and Jay just has to keep going, keep cooking, keep feeding, keep simulating travel, keep loving someone who might not remember loving him back, keep carrying both their lives alone until death comes. Preparing for the end. Death is coming. Jay Leno knows this, and he doesn't have that luxury anymore. Not with Mavis dying slowly in front of him, and not with his 75-year-old body that's been burned and broken and beaten. So he's doing what practical people do when they can't avoid reality anymore. He's getting his affairs in order. In April 2024, around the same time he got conservatorship over Mavis, Jay updated their estate plan with major changes. The Lenos don't have children. This has always been their choice, they're normal. But when you're planning an estate, it matters a lot, because kids are usually the default, the automatic inheritors, the ones who get everything. Without kids, you have to decide deliberately where your life's accumulation goes. Jay's got money, lots of it. Reports estimate his net worth somewhere between $450 and $600 million. Decades of Tonight Show salaries, stand-up tours, car show deals, investments, and that absurdly valuable vehicle collection. That's generational wealth. Dynasty money, the kind that usually gets split between children and grandchildren. Instead, Jay's primary heirs are his nephew and Mavis's brother. The updated trust boosts their combined inheritance to about $7 million. It is a fortune to normal people, but against Jay's total worth, it's less than 2%. Where's the rest going? Charity. Various causes, foundations, organizations that mattered to Jay and Mavis throughout their lives. He hasn't specified exactly which ones publicly, but you can guess. Women's rights groups, probably. Automotive preservation organizations, definitely. Comedy charities, maybe. The stuff they cared about when they had time to care about anything beyond survival. In August 2024, he started seriously planning a museum for his car collection. He wants the cars to outlive him. He wants future generations to see the 1909 Stanley steamer he restored, the 2014 McLaren P1, the 1955 Buick Roadmaster, and the other 181 cars preserved forever under his name, Jay Leno's Big Dog Garage. "No one lives forever," he said in an interview. Simple statement, obvious truth, but coming from Jay, right now, it hits differently. It's not philosophical musing, it's an acknowledgement. He's thinking about forever because forever is getting closer. And here's something morbid but real. Jay's probably thinking about which comes first, him or Mavis. If Mavis dies first, Jay keeps going alone, finishes the museum maybe, does more stand-up and takes care of the cars. He probably continues to live in the house where they built their life, surrounded by memories of someone who couldn't remember. That's one kind of hell. If Jay dies first, Mavis won't understand. She might not even process the information. She'll wake up the next morning confused about where Jay went, forget he's gone, ask for him repeatedly. The people caring for her will have to explain over and over, and she'll grieve fresh each time. Another cruel loop of dementia. There's no good option here. No happy ending waiting around the corner. Just different versions of loss and pain and endings. Jay keeps working through all of this. Still does stand-up. Still hosts Jay Leno's Garage on CNBC. Still writes columns for Popular Mechanics about carburetors and engine specs and automotive history. Work is probably the only thing keeping him sane. The only hours where he doesn't have to think about Mavis deteriorating or his own mortality or how empty everything feels now. People who see him recently say he looks exhausted. July 2025 photos showed him looking pale and aged after a vintage car broke down. Not the robust, energetic guy from his Tonight Show days. Just tired, weathered, a 75-year-old man who's been through too much and isn't getting any younger, but he's still here. Still cooking dinner for Mavis, still driving her past familiar landmarks, still pretending this can work somehow. In November 2024 interviews, people online shared his words about caregiving. His face was full of peace, one person wrote. He said, "I truly love taking care of her." And maybe that's genuine. Maybe Jay Leno has found some Zen acceptance of his situation. Maybe love really is enough to sustain him through this nightmare. Or maybe he's just good at performing. At putting on the face people expect, at hiding the darkness behind jokes and stoic acceptance. 22 years hosting The Tonight Show teaches you how to smile even when you're breaking inside, how to deliver the punchline even when nothing's funny, how to make audiences feel good regardless of what you're actually feeling. Maybe Jay's just doing his longest set yet, performing stability and peace and acceptance for everyone watching, while inside, privately, he's screaming. We'll never really know. That's the thing about pain this deep. It's private, it's yours alone. All we see is the surface, the interviews, the statements, the careful PR, but sometimes, in unguarded moments, the truth slips through. The crack in his voice talking about Mavis reliving her mother's death, the tears in November 2025 videos, the exhaustion in recent photos. Those are the real moments, the ones that tell you what's actually happening behind the carefully maintained facade. Jay Leno is preparing to die. Not imminently, maybe, not tomorrow, but he's settling accounts, planning legacies, making sure everything's handled. That's what you do when you know time is running out and you want to control what you can while you still can. And in the meantime, he just keeps going. One day after another. One more morning of watching Mavis wake up confused. One more dinner cooked and fed, and one more drive around the neighborhood pretending it's an adventure. Until it ends, however it ends. The cruelest tragedy of all. So here we are, at the end of Jay Leno's story. Except it's not the end yet. He's still here, still breathing, still caring for Mavis, still existing in this strange place between life and death, between the person he used to be and whoever he becomes after all this is over. Let's be honest about something. Completely, brutally honest. Jay Leno survived a garage fire that should have killed him, walked away from a motorcycle crash that could have been fatal, fell 60 feet down a rocky hill and performed comedy the same night. Those are incredible stories, miraculous even, the kind of stuff that makes headlines and viral videos. But none of that was the real test. The real test is what he's doing right now, waking up every morning knowing his wife doesn't remember yesterday, cooking meals for someone who might not recognize him tomorrow, living alone inside a marriage that technically still exists but functionally ended years ago when dementia started erasing the woman he fell in love with in 1976. That's the tragedy. Not the burns or broken bones or brushes with death. Those heal. Those become stories you tell at parties. War wounds you show off with dark humor. This doesn't heal. This just continues. Day after day, morning after morning, watching someone disappear incrementally, so slowly you can track every loss, every forgotten memory, every confused moment, every time she asks who you are. And here's maybe the darkest part. The thing nobody wants to say out loud. Jay's trapped. He can't leave. Morally, ethically, legally, emotionally, he can't walk away. Mavis needs him. She's his responsibility under the conservatorship, his wife of 45 years, the woman he chose every single day for nearly half a century. You don't abandon that. You don't cut and run for a younger partner, as Jay himself joked about. But he also can't fix it, can't make her better. So Jay just exists in between, not able to leave, not able to save her, not able to grieve fully because she's still technically here, not able to move forward because every day demands the same backward-looking care. It's torture, slow, relentless, inescapable. And here's what makes it even worse. Jay doesn't get sympathy the way other people would. He's rich, famous, successful. He's got millions in the bank and a garage full of irreplaceable cars and a career most comedians would kill for. People look at that and think, well, at least he's comfortable. At least he can afford the best care. At least he's not struggling financially. As if money fixes watching your wife forget you. As if wealth makes dementia hurt less. As if a big house full of Ferraris compensates for coming home to someone who doesn't remember your wedding day. It's all completely meaningless when the person you love is disappearing. And the childlessness probably haunts him. Not because they made the wrong choice. They didn't. For 45 years, it was the right choice. It gave them freedom and independence and the exact life they wanted. But now it means Jay is completely alone in this. No one to share the burden. No one to talk to who understands from the inside what losing Mavis feels like. No one to help make decisions about her care or just give him a weekend off to breathe. Just Jay. And Mavis's ghost, and cars that don't talk back. In some interview, Jay mentioned he'd rather be with Mavis than doing anything else. And that's beautiful, truly. That's the kind of love everyone hopes they'll feel someday, that devotion that persists even when everything else falls apart. But it's also unbearably sad, because being with Mavis now means being with someone who isn't fully there, who exists in fragments, who might smile at him today and ask who he is tomorrow. That's not the partnership they built. That's not the marriage they chose. It's a pale shadow of it, but maybe that's what true love is. Staying even when it is difficult, and even if it means getting heartbroken every day he wakes. Jay has given all he can for Mavis, but he had to dig deep each day and find more to give, because the alternative is unimaginable. Can Jay continue to give, or is he stretched too thin? Let us know in the comments. We'll let you have more details for you about the tragic couple. If you want more about them or any of your other celebrity couples, like this video and subscribe to this channel. We'll see you in the next video.